Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic, and today we're going to be talking about our buddy, our boy, Scott Mendelson, Scotty the boy Mendelson, over at Forbes.com. He has not let us down yet with any of his articles, with any of his points of view. They are all just so spot on, so brilliant. I just cannot wait to dive into this. Just the title alone kind of just, it just makes me so happy. It says Star Wars 9's big problem won't be The Last Jedi backlash or Solo's failure. Well, if it isn't those things, I would love to know what the biggest problem going ahead is, because if it's not those things, what in the world could it possibly be, Scott Mendelson? Alright, so he starts off. Star Wars The Last Jedi's debuts on Netflix instant today, just over 7 months after its theatrical opening weekend, and just as a bunch of trolls have gained the internet by announcing their intentions to, really, you're going to put in there? Remake The Last Jedi in a way that pleases them. Alright, so first off, I think all of us here are so excited to watch The Last Jedi again. I mean, every single person. I mean, it's only a small group of trolls, right? It's only a small group of trolls that actually hated The Last Jedi, that actually thought it was not a very good film, and has no impact on the film whatsoever, has no impact on the box office for Solo whatsoever. It's only that group of people, right? So this film should do really well on Netflix, right? Most likely not. I would say most people probably aren't going to want to watch. If you saw it in theaters, most people are not going to want to see it again, first off. And most people that did not see it in theaters in the first place really probably at this point have no motivation to actually go out and see it either, especially since the reception has been so toxic for this film, especially within the Star Wars community itself. Anyway, so also I love how he just calls out people saying, oh, you're a bunch of trolls trying to remake The Last Jedi. No, they're fans. Again, I'm not saying who's a real fan, who's not a real fan, but they're just fans who hated what Rian Johnson did. Again, Rian Johnson, this is the person that said he wanted 50% of the audience to like it, 50% of the audience to hate it. Guess what? He did just that. He split the fandom. He broke the fandom in half, and that's what you got. And so now you have several people, not trolls, but people, fans, who want to remake The Last Jedi and make a better film. I don't see what's so wrong with that. Wanting to make something better, I don't see what's so wrong with it. I don't know why you, Scott, have to be attacking people for attacking just fans of all things to just try and make a better film. Don't understand that one bit. Anyway, he says, I wouldn't pay these folks much mind, as A, you can safely ignore folks, and B, blogging about them, even in jest, gives them the media credibility they so desire. Oh, you mean just like you just did, Scott Mendelson? I like how you're giving advice to people to ignore, and yet you're the one not ignoring them, and one of the reasons why you say is because even if you talk about them, even if you blog about them in jest, which you seem to be doing in this situation, you give them media credibility. So what you're saying is that you're giving them media credibility, and for others not to do it? Great job, Scott. Oh man, I always appreciate your insight. You're always so spot on, and I know that you just put a lot of thought into these articles before you write them. Oh, I love it. But for the record, he says, Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi is arguably the best Star Wars movie since The Empire Strikes Back. Wow. Man, what are some of those arguments, Scott? I would love to hear them. Please continue. Something tells me that he won't. He'll just put that out there, assume that it's true, assume that it's gospel, and think that everyone else will just assume it just right along with him, when in reality, no. A lot of people did not like The Last Jedi. A lot of people hated The Last Jedi. In fact, that's why not only do you have the Rotten Tomatoes score, which I know you cannot put total trust in Rotten Tomatoes. I know this, but if you talk to most Star Wars fans, most people either hate it, there are some that do love it, and then there's many more who are just in that middle ground saying, I didn't really like it that much, but I don't necessarily hate it, and that's not a really good place for a Star Wars film to be. So for you to say that it's arguably the best Star Wars film, okay, it may be in your opinion, and I would love to hear your arguments for that since you seem to have so much confidence in them, but I'm sorry, oh my goodness. When someone who's trying to act like they're a member of like the news media, and they're trying to present these things as fact when in reality they're just opinion, it just, it frustrates me so much. All right, anyway, it says, and whatever fate awaits Star Wars 9 in December of 2019, the biggest challenge will not be the reception of The Last Jedi or the Solo Star Wars story film. Really? Well, again, still waiting for you to tell me what exactly is going to be something that's going to hurt it. Because if it's not The Last Jedi and it's not Solo, what in the world is going to affect Episode 9? Are you just ignoring everything around these films? Are you just, again, living in that small media bubble that you and your friends like to live in? You just ignore reality. You just ignore the voices of the fans, and you think to yourself, oh, we're right. We're right. And look, my friend's saying it, and his friend's saying it, and his friend's saying it, and we're all saying it together, so it must be true. No, that's not how the world works. So now you're going to go ahead and explain why we're right by trying to, again, twist the facts into your own narrative. All right. Even with the mixed positive reviews, I love that word. What in the world is mixed positive? You either have something that's a positive review, a negative review, or a mixed review. You don't have this like secondary tier of mixed positive or mixed negative. It's either negative, mixed, or positive. And that just tells you how bad this film is. When you have to essentially make up words and make up terms to justify it, you know that you're on the wrong side of this. So anyway, he says something mixed positive. It's a mixed. At best, it's a mixed reviews of Solo: Last Jedi, or rather Solo: A Star Wars Story. Good Lord, if we had Solo and The Last Jedi together, that would have been awful. And it has finished its first month in theaters with 203 million domestic and overall 355 million worldwide, which means that it's probably not going to reach 400 million, which means it's going to lose at minimum $200 million. But no, it's not because of Solo. It's not because of The Last Jedi. It's because of other things. Let's see if he has the facts. He says, had the film come in closer to whatever it was supposed to cost before the director swap and reshoot sent its budget skyrocketing, probably closer to 160 than 250 million, that would be a disappointment but not disastrous total, about par with Mad Max Fury Road. And that it'll earn 205, 210 domestic merely means that it was the overseas rejection that killed it. Okay, yeah, but it wasn't really accepted much here either. And if you try and compare this to other films, again, based on the production budget, you still are just missing a huge chunk of the facts here. All right, he says then, had it done even a standard 33-67 split, a $210 million domestic, $630 million worldwide, cumulative would have been on par with perhaps Walt Disney should expect for these Star Wars stories. So yeah, that would have then put it at around 840 million, which is actually, he says on par, and yet that's less than any other Star Wars film has ever made. So it still shows that there is this lack, it's still, for one, if those numbers were true, which they're not, so he's bringing it in this impossible hypothetical to try and make an argument, when in reality, those aren't the numbers, and so you can't just ignore the real numbers. So even if let's say those were the numbers, that would still be the lowest grossing film in Star Wars history, and also would still not be a very good turnout. Again, would have turned a profit, sure, but it still wouldn't have been that much to, that much to look at, not much to write home about. But yet, those aren't the numbers. The numbers are, this film's not going to even make $400 million worldwide, which means it's going to lose Disney $200 million because it only gets 60% of that $400 million. Oh, Scott, do some research, man. This is just getting ridiculous. Or he goes on, the good news, bad news for Solo regarding the Star Wars franchise is that it bombed because well, at least he uses the correct term there, because audiences didn't want to see it. I wonder what audiences didn't want to see it. You're going to talk about them? Probably not. Not because they were appalled by The Last Jedi, again, living in that bubble, ignoring reality, or because they are now boycotting Star Wars The Last Jedi, still earned, or rather, not because they're now boycotting, okay. So sorry, missed that up. We're appalled by Last Jedi, or because they are now boycotting Star Wars. So no, it has nothing to do with those things, right? No, let's see what he has to say. The Last Jedi still earned rave pre-release reviews. Yeah, from critics. Look at the fans. Fans very different. Solid opening weekend audience reception and halfway decent 2.8 times multiplier for a 620 million domestic. Okay, yes. So you're ignoring the fact that it dropped a record, almost a record for Star Wars films, 70% from week 1 to week 2, and that it made over 70% of its total box office take in the first 2 weeks. You're not going to talk about those numbers now, are you? Probably not. All right, now he's just making up just crap and garbage about the numbers when he's just ignoring all reality. All right, at the very least, the 1.5-year gap between Ron Howard's Solo and J.J. Abrams' Star Wars 9 will circumvent any franchise overload. Okay, that's talking about franchise fatigue. That's total garbage. Look at any MCU film that come out close to enough together. Every single one of them has turned a profit, even during competitive weeks, even while competing with other films. So that is a total garbage argument that does not stand up when brought to scrutiny. Moreover, whatever demographics will stay home due to their dissatisfaction with The Last Jedi will be countered by folks who show up because it's the third and final chapter in this new trilogy. And again, that's why I say I think that episode 9 is going to at least break even, but I'm sorry, it's not going to be breaking any records anytime soon, because there is, again, even though it might be smaller, I wouldn't say it's a majority, but there is a small minority of people, a strong minority of people who will not go see this film, who will actively boycott it perhaps, and that is going to affect the overall numbers. Because guess what? When we look at someone mentioned this in the comments several times, when you look at the top, the hardcore 10% to 20% of the fans, they are the ones that usually spend about 80% of the total money on all products, including film. And so if you have a majority of that 10 to 20% that is mad, that is furious, that is going to have a huge impact on the box office numbers. Just look to Solo. People did not want to go see it, including the fans, and it was the fans that did not want to see it. It was the fans that boycotted it, and guess what happened? It's losing $200 million. That will continue in some effect, maybe not as much, but it will still continue with episode 9. Again, I'm still waiting for you to show me evidence to explain how this could possibly be the case. Whether or not J.J. Abrams is able to make a third flick that makes both Force Awakens and Last Jedi fans happy, no, not going to be able to. He says it's an open question, sure, but it will still be the 9th and possibly final saga in the ongoing Skywalker Solo story. No, I'm sorry, that story is over. They killed Luke. Han Solo is dead. There is no, and unfortunately now Leia's gone too. So this story is done. This story is totally gone, is totally done. It doesn't matter what they do with Force Ghosts. This is done. And we can thank Rian Johnson for that, for just totally butchering this story and just putting J.J. Abrams in a really terrible situation. It would be like dedicated MCU fans staying home from Avengers 4 because they didn't like Avengers Infinity War. Yes, but that didn't happen. You do not have a large group of fans doing that. Look at the audience ratings. Look at the critic ratings. Look at every single rating. Look at just the general audience take on that film. It was overall very, very positive. So no, you cannot make that same argument because there is not the same thing going on in the MCU as there is going on in Star Wars. Stop trying to degrade. Stop trying to downgrade. Stop trying to deter the people who are angry and frustrated and act like they don't exist and that they are insignificant. Again, the Solo box office numbers speak for themselves. The loss between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi speaks for itself as well. Whether it takes the standard 20-25% jump from The Last Jedi, it's not going to happen. Audiences will show up because it's a Star Wars event. Not all audiences, not anymore. These are not event films anymore. That has now just been destroyed by everything that Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson have been doing. At least they'll show up once. Nope. That probably not going to happen. Again, will it make money? Most likely. Or rather, will it turn a profit slightly or break even? I would say at this point in time, yes. Is it going to make Force Awakens numbers? No. Is it going to make Last Jedi numbers? I don't see it. I really don't see the case for that yet. Again, I'm still waiting for the evidence, Scott. I would love to see it. The biggest threat to Star Wars 9's final global gross isn't Star Wars fatigue, fan backlash, or any potentially non-existent variables. I agree with you on that first point. It's not Star Wars fatigue, that's total garbage. It'll be the sheer amount of big movies opening in November and December of 2019. Oh my goodness, so the media is already prepping for episode 9 to not do well, and they are blaming it on the other films that are coming out. When has that ever affected a Star Wars film? When has a Star Wars film ever not done well, domestically or abroad, because other big movies have been coming out? Force Awakens came out in December. It made over $2 billion. I'm sorry, Last Jedi had so much chaos and still made $1.3 billion. But now we see the effects of The Last Jedi with Solo's box office numbers, which tanked. And it's not because it came out over Memorial Day weekend. Other Star Wars films have come out over Memorial Day weekend with competition, and guess what? They did well. So this is total garbage. So now it's saying Wonder Woman 1984, Sonic the Hedgehog, James Bond 25, let's see, Terminator reboot, Frozen 2. I'm sorry, but if it was actually a good film made by people who love Star Wars, there would be nothing to stop Star Wars fans from going to see it. But the problem is that we still have Kathleen Kennedy in charge. We still have Rian Johnson, at least officially. Again, nothing's been said officially on that. I really do think that she's gone. I think Rian Johnson's trilogy is canceled, but nothing's been said about that officially. And it's just been insane. So no, just because you have these films coming out and you're already making excuses for it not doing well is just absolutely ridiculous. Oh, let's see. Some of those might be delayed. Yeah, Wicked, I don't know what's going on with that. In the early November stuff, maybe played out by Christmas. Again, if it's Star Wars film, if it's a true Star Wars film that is made by people who love Star Wars, There's not anything that anyone could do to stop someone from showing up for it. Again, talk to any other person who camped out for the previous Star Wars films, who camped out for even just like a small, brief glimmer of footage. I mean, talk to them and say, oh, this is what's going on, because they will just spit in your face for this. That's not factoring in the likely schedule changes if Disney or Comcast buys Fox, but that's a lot of big movies, end of 2019, and then it goes on. Basically, so his argument here, so again, let me just see if there's anything else that he's saying here that is going to be not so in 2017, blah, 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 can no longer count on when you put Spider-Man. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so yeah. So Scott's only argument, and there's only one argument, is that the only thing that will affect Star Wars 9's numbers is the fact that there are other movies coming out, because there are never situations when other movies come out at the same time or a week apart or 2 weeks apart, and that's the reason why a movie fails. Dude, grow up, put your head on straight, and come back to reality, please. I say that all the time, but please do come back to reality. Guys, have you read this article from Scott Mendelson? Do you think that he will ever get it? Do you think that he will ever understand? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe as well if you haven't done so already, and also share this video if you liked it as well. I would greatly appreciate it. Have a great day, guys, as always, and as I always like to say, God bless.